Hello friends, this is the second video about Venus and the sign of Leo, but now we're going to look at some of the aspects. Venus entered the sign of Leo on June 13th, and as soon as it came into the sign, it started to interact with the three outer planets. On June 15th, Venus forms a sextile to Uranus in Gemini. Then on June 17th, Venus forms a trine to Neptune in the sign of Aries. And on that same day, on the 17th, Venus will be opposing Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. Technically, all of these aspects are perfecting on different days. But because Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are at those early degrees, Venus is going to encounter them as an aspect right away as she moves into the sign of Leo. And all of these interactions are going to be ongoing till about June 22nd until they're about 5-degree orb away from each other. And as I sat there thinking about these symbols in this video, I found myself constantly returning to the same question. And for me, when I look at astrology, it's not just about what will happen to me or to us. Is this transit good or bad? I want to know what it is that life is attempting to teach us how to evolve. It's time for something. And when we consider the three outer planets, it's talking about our evolution towards a particular kind of a trajectory. Because, in my opinion, every transit is trying to develop a capacity, not just to bring you your next relationship or money or promotion. It could also indicate timings of such things. But a lot of transits pass, and if we're waiting for those things, it's as if they did nothing. But they're creating these openings where we have to pivot, where we have to rethink, reflect, re-engage. So they're expanding our consciousness. And what struck me about Venus entering the sign of Leo is that the moment our desires, our wants, appear at the center of our consciousness, life externally also starts to immediately respond to it. Pay attention to this. And I don't mean by granting it. In fact, life starts testing it. And that's because the moment that we discover that, hey, this thing matters to me, reality itself starts to ask us different kinds of questions. Reality always will ask, well, you have this desire, but do you know what this desire requires of you? And not in terms of what we want, but in terms of what must change so that future can become a possibility, so that desire can become something manifest. So it asks, what has to change? What has to come to an end? What needs to be transformed? And I would argue this is one of the reasons why Venus is encountering Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Because for us to have a desire, to have a wanting, to have a gravitational pull towards something, is just the beginning. At this point, the heart is just identifying a future, but the future is going to start asking us for something in return in order for us to have our heart's desires met. This means we have to come to a new form of understanding. It's asking us for a new form of participation every time we express our heart's desires. And I would say the deepest lesson of this transit for us is to gain the capacity and the capability to become a participant in the creation of what we want, so that we gain the ability to express it. And I don't mean verbally, but as a self-expression, the way the sign of Leo wants it. And this is important because, as we all know, wanting something in life is very easy. What's hard is the departure from the old and to the arrival of what it is that we want, which often comes with a lot of challenges. So we're going to talk about these themes. I'm going to look at each of the transits. And before getting into the layers of this video, I just want to let you know that the next video will be about Chiron, but this time moving into the sign of Taurus on June 19th, and it will stay there till about September. And then it will go back into Aries and then permanently come into the sign of Taurus. So it's going to give us a preview. And I want to talk about this preview, things that we should pay attention to. And if you want to catch that video and a lot more, please do subscribe, press that notification bell so YouTube notifies you when those videos are out. You can also go to my email in the description box below if you want to book a reading, or you can go to my website at parisayazdi.com for more information. And now, without further ado, let's just briefly go over Venus in Leo before we bring all of the transits together. And I do want to let you know the previous video right before this one was about Venus in Leo. We talked about some of the shadows and some of the challenges that can come from displacements, whether via transit or if you have this in your natal chart. And I do encourage you to watch that video because it'll give you depth of this aspect of Venus being placed in this sign. But understanding Venus in Leo, the first thing that I want us to keep in mind, Venus in itself is a principle of attraction. There's this magnetism as its power. It can stand still and attract things to itself. It's describing what we value, appreciate, and enjoy. It's also saying what it is that we consider worthy of our time, energy, devotion. And in general, it's denoting the things that we're drawn to. In some ways, Venus is telling us that it's that capacity within us to look at something, to say, I like that, and I have a preference for that. That thing matters to me. Now, when we look at Leo, on the other hand, this is a sign that's very much concerned with development of the center. Anything that constitutes as the center. It is that which is you within that emanates and has an expression and an identity externally. This is represented by Leo, as well as the sun, its ruler. And in a lot of ways, Leo seeks significance in this life. Like when we look at our sky, when the sun is out, the sun is the most significant thing. It's at the center of life, what is generating life. That's why it seeks significance, because it is. And again, considering this is the sun's sign, it is a sign that's concerned with governance. So this sign's always asking, what's mine to govern? What deserves my wholehearted participation? And what allows me to shine fully as myself? So as I was saying in the last video too, when Venus enters into the sign of Leo, this notion of value, which is coming from Venus, and again, not the value of morality and ethics like Jupiter, but the things that we perceive as valuable, become something very personal in the sign of Leo. They become intertwined. And this intertwining means that not only we start to examine what it is that we value, but what feels personally meaningful to us, what makes us feel inspired and alive. And what Venus values in the sign of Leo are not things that we have to act towards purely out of obligation. There has to be some sort of a desire here at play. And this is because the sign of Leo is of the fire element. So there has to be a sense of passion there. There has to be something in the heart that genuinely wants to participate in this game of life, to bring the self in the center of it. And this is why I was saying earlier, one of the primary themes of this transit with the three aspects, because Venus is in the sign of Leo, is to understand what it is that we desire. It's about the questions of what it is that I truly want in this life. And you know, I was saying that every time we have a desire, then life comes against us or in relation to us. Reality shows up suddenly, and it wants us to change certain things. So I would say this transit is very much about what is it that the heart desires. Now, with all of that said, let's talk about the first connection that Venus is going to make, which is to Uranus in the sign of Gemini, where Uranus is sitting at 2 degrees and Venus will be at 2 degrees of Leo. And now, because these two guys are making a connection as a sextile, Uranus is going to bring this notion of the future into Venus's question. So it becomes about what future is it that my heart is attempting to move towards? And this future question is coming into the equation because of Uranus. Uranus represents the future. It's almost as if Uranus right away interrupts Venus and is asking it, can your desires evolve? Can you evolve to meet your desires? So Uranus, even though this is a sextile, it's given us an opportunity to understand something here, which is very much related to our misconception, which is our desires alone don't manifest anything per se. Desires are only identifying a destination. And Uranus here being related to the future, it's concerning itself with a pathway towards that future for Venus as a sextile. And because Uranus is sitting in the sign of Gemini, this pathway is largely mental and cerebral. And what I mean by that, it has to do with the ways we think, how we interpret reality, how we communicate, how we connect ideas together, bring ourselves in relation to other people. So when we look at Venus in the sign of Leo, that Venus can identify what its own heart wants. But Uranus in the sign of Gemini is now bringing the intellect into the picture to see if our mind is capable of supporting that future. Because you know, sometimes the obstacle is not lack of passion or that we need more desires. Sometimes our obstacles are our own outdated perspectives or outdated stories, our outdated understanding of what's possible. And you know, Uranus in Gemini in general can bring these sudden informations, conversations, connections, where suddenly they give us a unique realization. And that realization can jolt us out of our old ways. So Uranus has this function right now. It's as if it's creating a situation, a dialogue, an idea where suddenly we become aware of a new possibility. And what used to feel impossible, it becomes something viable, something that we can do. And I say we can do because this is a sextile. It's trying to help Venus. So in a sense, it's showing us what we need to change in order to move towards the right pathway, towards this desire, which is in reality in the future. Uranus is showing Venus that you have this desire that doesn't exist yet because there's a different future that you want, but that future also requires you to change your thinking, the way of perceiving and connecting. That's the only way to get to that future. It's telling Venus, yes, your heart now has this attraction, gravitation towards something, but you need to change this in order to take this to that future destination that you want. That's what the desire is denoting. And this is one of the reasons why in so many spiritual schools of thought, they talk about relinquishing desires if you want to be in the present, because your desires are always taking you to some future destination. And Uranus itself is about this. So that's why it's creating this kind of a dynamic. So in some ways, this is about the alignments of the mind, the intellect, and the heart. But now let's go to the next encounter that Venus has, which is with Neptune in the sign of Aries. This one will be a trine, and they perfect at 4 degrees of Aries and 4 degrees of Leo. And this one's fascinating. Right now, all the aspects to Neptune are actually kind of fascinating to me because what Neptune did in the sign of Pisces was heavy duty in terms of just dreaming about things, imagining, being very abstract. But Aries has totally changed this atmosphere. We're starting to see that, okay, these dreams that we have, they actually require action and movement. And right now, because this is a trine, one fire sign to another fire sign, this notion of movement and action really matters. And I want us to understand, yes, Leo has a lot to do with admiration, significance, which seems like you just stand there and then you're just receiving all of these things. But Leo doesn't just admire possibility. The king wants to live that possibility and to be it. It wants to embody it. And it wants to have the capacity to express it as its own self-expression. So with Venus here, the heart is identifying what it is that the self wants to be and to embody, that desire. It could be a relationship. It could be a creative project. It could be about some beautification of some aspect of life or oneself. Look at where the sign of Leo is sitting in your chart. Which house, which sector is talking about those themes. But in the middle of this longing of the heart, Neptune's almost as if it's whispering to Venus, will this just remain a desire, a dream, or are you going to figure out how to have a sense of direction for it? And it is worth saying, every meaningful future actually starts invisibly. And I say that because first it has to exist in our imagination what Neptune itself is about. There's always a thought behind every act, for better or for worse. But the mind and imagination by itself can't manifest anything. At some point, this imagination that wants to come into existence in some future time, it requires our action, effort, and participation. And this is exactly where Neptune in Aries becomes something significant. And we have to remember Venus is in the sign of Leo, which is a very masculine sign. That means is an active sign. Like Venus here too is starting to realize, okay, I have these desires. I want to feel good, but they can't just stay in this realm of fantasy. It's saying to itself, I need to figure out a way to relate to these desires as my calling. And if you have ever had a calling, you have this sense of urgency to act. This is why artists, this is what shocks people. Like you see someone who paints and they go in a room and they're drawing and painting for hours. They have this weird drive to show up, whether if you're a writer, musician, athlete. When you have a calling, there's this urge to move, to initiate. And now we got two masculine signs interacting with each other. Aries, which is very inceptive, and Leo, which is also a masculine sign, which has to do with action. So these two are right now teaching us that we might be a little fuzzy about how to move forwards, but the solution is in the action itself. So this aspect is strengthening our heart's courage about our dreams and our desires. It's giving it significance to make it into a calling so that we feel propelled compelled to act. And again, it's a trine, so it's harmonious, it's cooperative, and it's trying to help. It wants to show us that once when we act towards these desires and dreams, confidence and certainty about those dreams become apparent in the heart. Because a lot of times we want things, but we just can't find it in us to act towards it. This transit is supporting the action, which is absolutely necessary. So in a sense, this signature is trying to mature our dreams and desires because it's telling us it requires our act of participation. It requires our will and willingness. That is the first step. And it's saying that if you take the first step, that sense of self-trust and confidence to take the next step towards that future becomes more possible. And when I talk about maturities, Venus, I'll make another video for this, but as Venus gets to about 13 to 14 degrees, it's going to make a trine to Saturn as well, which is the planet of maturity, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, let's go to our last aspect, which is that opposition with Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, which will be at 5 degrees. And oppositions create tension because it's like being on a teeter-totter and you want it to just be balanced. You don't want to get out of balance like this. So it requires a lot of mindfulness and a lot of negotiation. And if you think about it, up to this point, we're talking about sextiles and trines. So it's almost like Venus has a cheerleading squad with Uranus and Neptune. Come on, your desires are good. They matter. This is how they look like in the future. This is what you need to do for them. And then we have Pluto like, boom, drops the bomb. And the bomb is, what about other people? Your desires, your values, your dreams, fine. But what about other people? And this is the moment where Venus in Leo is being reminded, your heart in this world is not alone. It's not just about it. It's reminding Venus that everyone values something. Everyone wants something. Everyone is attempting to bring some future into existence. So Pluto is asking Venus a difficult question, which is, can your desires and what it is that you value coexist with other people's desires? The sign of Aquarius has to do with the collectives. And we have to remember this act of manifestation that trine and sextile were trying to help Venus with. Manifestation is rarely a solitary act. You require the resources of the world, the help of other people. Manifestations occurring in the world. And this world also belongs to other people as much as it belongs to us. So we have to take it into consideration every time we want to chase our dreams. When we value something and we want to put it on top, we have to take other facets of the world into consideration. This is what the sign of Aquarius opposing Leo's sign is showing us. Leo is the king, but Aquarius is the people. And who is a king without its people? So this is an important question. And Pluto brings the darker aspects of these questions into the forefront. Pluto's reminding us that everything that you do is requiring other people, other human beings. And that means it involves their projects, their process, their value, and their heart's desires as well. Because this transit in Leo is happening for everyone. We're talking about everyone's heart and their desires. And you know, every time we have a desire in our head, in our imagination, it's beautiful. It's usually when it gets involved with other people, that's when the complications come in. Life is always more simple by ourselves, is when we go into the worlds where things get more complex. Pluto wants to remind us right now that you live in a shared reality, and you better understand what that means. So it's revealing a lot of our unconscious or subconscious assumptions. It's going to reveal to us expectations that we have, but have never been questioned, or we haven't questioned them yet, because it wants to show us that we've been imagining the future without considering others or the future of others. So Venus, I was saying in the last video, it can personalize value. Like I spent the entire video talking about that. Pluto is trying to show that values cannot be personal like that. Values have to be relational. It wants to show us that what it is that we love, what our calling is, what our dream and desires are, they inevitably affect other people. Like we see this in the world of consumerism, right? Like I want that item, but not understanding how much of the world has gone into making that item from mining it to the factory or the sweatshop that it was made, all the transportation and the infrastructure that was needed, all the human labor, everything that's gone to it until it gets to your hand. This is the cloth from my glasses to clean it. I don't know where this guy comes from. I don't know what the history of this thing is, but it involves a lot. Pluto wants us to understand the things that we desire, the future that we're chasing. It changes the trajectory of other people's lives. And there's a dark truth in that. Like if we were to figure out, I don't know, maybe there was child labor behind this. This seems benign to me now, but if I start questioning it and researching it and really care, this thing could become a cloth of pain. So Pluto wants us to understand how we are affecting the world by the things that we want and how we're moving in it. Pluto wants to show us that manifestation in itself comes with responsibility, because manifestation is the act of transformation. It is the act of death and rebirth. Understand what you're desiring. And it wants to show us that that death and rebirth doesn't just happen to you because you want to achieve something. Therefore, that means you're going to depart from something to arrive to something in the future. That death and rebirth, that transformation occurs for the environment and the people that you move through, because we live in a joint reality. It's not just our own personal reality. So we affect the world and the people around us. And this is also bringing a sense of maturity, because it's giving us a kind of a consciousness that what we want changes the world around us. It doesn't just change our life and meet our heart's desires. We got to understand what we're sacrificing for this heart's desire. This is maturity. The maturity is to know how much we're taking from others and from the world so that we can meet this heart's desire. Pluto wants us to know right now that nothing is without a cost, that the future has a cost. And sometimes it involves other people, but understand this. And other people might be standing in opposition to us because they're seeing that how much we are chasing something that might feel selfish to them, that is deducing from their light and their sense of self. So Pluto can come to represent all of these things. And if we were to bring all of these three aspects together, they are maturing the Venus within us in the sign of Leo. Because when Venus enters Leo, its first question is, what is my heart's desire? But right away, Uranus is going to look at Venus and ask it, can these desires actually evolve beyond your old ways of thinking? Because they're trying to take you to some other future place. Are these just old recycled dreams, or are they actually transformative dreams? And then right after that, Neptune comes into the equation and it starts asking Venus, can this desire of yours move beyond imagination and have some action behind it? And then finally, Pluto comes in to ask Venus, can your dreams survive the reality of other people? And I would say maybe this is why Venus is encountering these three, one after another. And that's because when the heart discovers what it is it desires, what matters to it, again, life itself starts to prepare for its manifestation, which always occurs in the mind through our understanding, then through our participation and our action, and then through some sort of a transformative process in the world that permits that desire to become manifest. So I would say that this transit is not just about teaching us how to desire, it's teaching us what it takes for desires to come into reality, to manifest. And now we're getting to the end of the video. And before closing, please do remember to like, share, subscribe, and of course, comment. Let me know what your heart is asking for right now. What do you feel needs to change before this heart's desire can have a manifestation in the world? Because it's not enough just to want something. I know for some people, it might be that I want to want nothing. And that in itself is also a kind of wanting. But the question for all of us is, what's the first step that we can take? What needs to change so that what we desire can actually manifest? Because if you are sitting there under the premise of that documentary, The Secret, that I just think it and then somehow I achieve it, I don't think the person who says that understands that gap between thinking and achieving, which requires action. And a lot of this transit is about that. I'd love to know how this is unfolding for you. Let me know. And if you want a reading of this transit, upcoming transits, to understand your natal charts, your birth charts, what its promises are, what you've been through, why have you gone through what you've gone through, what was the purpose of all of this, and where it's all going, you can go to my email in the description box below and directly email me, or for more information, you can go to parisayazdi.com. And now to close. As Venus enters into Leo, this is actually an invitation for us to carefully listen to our heart, to recognize what really genuinely matters to us, to acknowledge what it is that we value, and to admit to ourselves what it is that we desire. And I would say if we pay attention, we'll see the deeper significance of desires is not just about the desire telling us what we want. Our wants, our desires are revealing to us who and what we are becoming. That's why they're coming into mind. That's how they're finding their place in our heart. And that's because every desire contains a future hidden in it. It's denoting a possibility, a direction, a version of ourselves that doesn't fully yet exist, but it's close enough that it can have this imagination and this feeling in the heart that I want this. So it's worth looking at it, whatever that may be. And I would say this is why life immediately starts testing our desires, because it wants to know, are you capable of transforming and becoming this other thing? It's like act of a metamorphosis. And desires are never benign. They destroy things in the process of becoming. They demand so much life force. So life's going to test it. It needs to understand the value of our desires too. And life wants to know, can we carry it? It wants to know, can your mind expand to hold a larger future? Because people rarely desire, like, please take away some of my health. Please take away some of my money. Please give me less in the future. Make me smaller. People want to go bigger, but you can't externally go bigger if the internal self is still like this. Life wants to know, has the interiority expanded to support this exteriority? Can you move from the realm of imagination and its flimsy, fantastical thing to real, grimy participation of life? Again, Venus is going to get a glimpse of this when it comes to that trine with Saturn too. So our desires are telling us something about the developmental trajectory of our life. It's showing us what kind of a human being we're becoming. And the world wants to know, okay, you're becoming that kind of a human being. That requires a particular kind of a future to emerge also. It needs to align things. We need to align things. This is why none of it is benign. And I think Venus coming into relation with these planets and having a dialogue, the purpose of it is not for us just to get things. It's showing us the metamorphosis of life that we need to go through. I think it's showing us that future that we're longing for. And the person we're becoming are not separate processes. They're in reality the same process. And maybe this is why the heart is so important in this transit. And not because the heart always knows how to get somewhere, but because the heart in some ways is more intelligent than the mind and any other facet of the self. Through longing, it knows what it wants and what it is before any other aspect of itself or the world can know. It's the heart that's always showing us the direction which life is attempting to grow in that way. And the sign of Leo is very much about the center. It's like the heart and the solar plexus. This is where all of your power is concentrated. This is where your sense of self emanates from. So there's a deep knowing here that no other part of the self knows or has privy to. And this brings us to the ends. And before actually ending it, I'd like to leave us with a wish. May we discover that the path towards what we value and desire the most is also the path towards becoming more ourselves, more aligned to what it is that we are made of. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.